I am still single, for those wondering.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of this season's First4LCFC podcast. We've had another reshuffle and I'm back off the bench for this week's episode in place of Austin, meaning that we have the original 3 back together for the first time in a while. Time will only tell if that's a good thing or not. So, of course, I'm joined by Edbert Noon and Christian Mosen. How are you both?
Very well, and it's nice to see Edbert's name last into the new season.
Yeah, nice is used liberally there, but yeah, it's nice to be here.
Well, look, as always, we're going to look at all the big Leicester City talking points. Now, I know last week, just quickly, I got some stick without even being on the podcast for dragging the average age up a bit. So thanks for that one, Ed. I prefer to look at it as experience and world knowledge, but there you go. Anyway, I'm here to keep your youthful exuberance in check, despite the fact that you're, 2 years younger than me? I don't know.
Oh, no, I'm not in my 40s.
There we go. So, look, let's get straight into it because this is going to be a rapid-fire podcast. As Leicester moved to the top of the Premier League table after winning our opening 2 games for the first time since the title-winning season with a 4-2 win against Burnley. So that's where we'll start.
Is that a fact? Is that a fact?
That is a fact. That is a stat coming at you.
You've been back on the podcast for a minute and you're dropping these knowledge bombs.
All you needed there to be the complete guy is a bit of the Champions League theme music.
I'm sure our friends over at Radio Leicester definitely not listening to this podcast.
Well, I mean, why play the real thing when you can have Ed sing it?
Oh no, that was the real thing. I'm playing off my phone.
Well, it was that good. No one even realised. But yeah, that's what there was some comments made about the hosting last week, but I won't get into that. So look, let's Chris. First question. Lots of positives in the game going forward, but there were quite a few scares at the back as we were defensively a bit open, weren't we?
So I'll be mature and not dwell upon what you said, but no, it is worrying. But I think if we were going to sort of predict what could have happened or how Burnley would have scored, I think we'd have sort of painted that exact goal. Like Chris Wood's blatantly bullied Justin. To be fair, I don't think there's anything wrong in what he's done. I think, it's sort of refreshing in a roundabout way to see that wasn't given as a foul. Whether or not it was a handball, obviously dubious. But yeah, so I don't know. We just looked a bit lightweight at the back. I think it's all well and good when we win a game 4-2, scoring goals freely, but they only had a couple of chances and they sort of scored from them. So arguably against, better opposition, how badly can we afford to get punished like that? We just, like I say, lightweight, not very good defending aerially. So surely we're just going to get exploited for that moving forwards.
I mean, it was quite clever. Wood obviously peeled off onto James Justin and realised that he'd beat him in the air. But I mean, do you think that part of that was due to not having the experienced head of Johnny Evans? Obviously, Wilfred Ndidi stepping in his place. Do you think that he's out of position, not as experienced there? Do you think that would have made a difference?
I think, well, like you say, targeting Justin is clever. I guess we didn't really see Ndidi get tested. Aerially. I think where I'd worry with Ndidi is if he's sort of left one-on-one, sort of in that sort of circumstance against someone like Aguero or, a Jesus sort of type player who's going to run at you. But, that hasn't happened yet. And obviously we'll move on to the Man City sort of preview later on. But no, in terms of how we manage Burnley, I think we did about as we contained them. It's just, we can't really do a lot about crosses coming in. And it's certainly an area we need to work on.
I mean, Burnley have a bit of a reputation for being a bit direct and not being the most, pro footballing side. But Ed, I thought that they actually played pretty well and they'll score a few goals this year, won't they?
Well, I was watching on American TV because I can, and they were actually saying that they think Burnley in a real might be in a relegation scrap this season, especially if Tim Howard was the pundit. He was saying, especially without Chris Wood, they seem, and with all their defensive injury problems at the minute, they seem really at risk of falling away. But the actual questions. based on what Chris said, actually, I think they played well to their strengths, which we know is sort of up, getting the balls in the box and dominating aerially. And when you've got inexperienced players like Justin, as good as he may or may not be, and then Ndidi, who is not a centre back, you any good professional really should be able to target that. And we saw that with the first goal, but I don't know, whilst I don't think they were as bad as the pundits were saying what I was watching, I do think we were comfortably the better side.
Yeah, well, maybe we should flip it on its head. Would have we scored 4 goals if they had their centre-back partnership playing? So, it swings and roundabouts when it comes to something like this. I know I might be coming across awfully pessimistic, but they ultimately, they're lacking a core to their team, and, they still managed to score 2 against us.
I mean, I thought the young lad Dunn who stepped in played rather well.
He done well, didn't he?
He did. He done well. No, he was excellent. But obviously, he's not going to be as good as Tarkowski or Ben Mee. So yeah, but going forward, that's more or less their full strength, wasn't it? I know they had some injuries, but
let's be honest, we are missing a lot of first teamers as well. So
one of the players that has come in and got a little bit of criticism after last game was James Justin, and obviously we saw him, like you both mentioned, he got bullied for the goal. But do you think the criticism being levelled at him is a bit unfair? Because obviously he is stepping into the first team probably earlier than Rodgers would have wanted.
Well, in all honesty, in my notebook, which I fondly use during matches, I had him a circle around his name after the first half. I was really impressed with what he was doing off the ball, albeit that was going forwards, which is worrying. But no, like in terms of runs he was making, he injects that pace in the final third, doesn't he? He takes players away from danger areas and frees up space. Obviously, is it right to be assessing a defender on their attacking capabilities? Probably not. And, that's where I think we will get found out moving forwards, regardless of whoever our wing backs are. But I was impressed with him. I think he's come on a lot. We've got to remember that just over a year ago, he was playing 2 or 3 divisions lower than where he's at now.
Well, that was his first league goal in 41 games, but his last goal was for Luton against Bradford City in League One, and that was only in November 2018. So his rise has been fast, and for a right back, especially, he's coming up against some very, very good players. But one of the things that we've spoken about before, Chris, just while we're talking about it, was that obviously the mood with Leicester fans has been very, very good. I don't want to drag that down too much because it's quite nice that we're not moaning about something. But how much can Leicester realistically take from the last 2 games given the opposition?
Yeah, this is a good question. Obviously, we spoke about it off air, but I think, and I was sort of thinking of an answer, but it's difficult, isn't it? Because you don't want to be too pessimistic, but at the same time, Crystal Palace are on 6 points. It's 2 games in. I always remember as like a child getting dead excited. Oh, look, we're top of the league. But let's face it, give it till 10 games, 15 matches when we've played, a fair sample size of abilities. Even after the next game against Man City, I think that'll give us a good gauge on where we are. I think, although I think even the most pessimistic fan would have surely given us, well, maybe not. They'd maybe given us 4 points from these 2 games, but maybe 6 isn't a surprise. And the big tests are yet to come. And as I've alluded to, I think defensively we haven't been tested that much yet.
I would go.
Go on, Ed,
sorry.
Go on after you, sir.
Jamie, you go first, and I'll go after you.
No, because mine was going to be a question. You go ahead.
Different. I was just going to say, actually, I think you can read quite a bit into it, or at least take quite a lot of positives, purely based on how awful the end of last season was. That
True.
Quite a few people, myself included, were not particularly hopeful going into this season, because whilst you expect some pickup purely because of how bad we were, didn't really know what to expect. But I guess we've shown in these 2 games with some key players out that the end of last season was not going back to where we should be. It was a terrible blip, and we've sort of proven that we are better than a lot of teams in this league, so we can be hopeful. Yeah, we might not be gunning for a top 4, top 6. We don't know that yet based on these results, but it's certainly positive enough. We should go into this season hopeful of a top half finish at least and a good European campaign.
Well, yeah, but
which we didn't look like doing at the end of last season.
Like, what indicators have you got that we're hopeful of a top 10 place? Right now, we're hopeful of what we've beaten 2 teams, so ultimately we could finish 18th, and there's absolutely no indicators.
Burnley are a solid Prem team that are usually around mid-ish table and kind of a lot better than them. I also just think like the 2 games, yeah, they're against lesser opposition, but I feel like we're dominant again in a way that we didn't see in the last few months of last season. And I think given that we're doing this with some of our key both attacking and defensive players out, I think there's reason for at least a little optimism. Obviously not going overboard, well aware that these aren't 2 of the better teams in the league, and like you say, we'll find out a lot more about the team after Man City, but you know, you couldn't have asked for much more. We're scoring goals, we're creating, and we got 6 points from 2 games. Happy days.
I mean, yeah, you're right. The mood was so desolate after the end of last season. It was important to start well, and you can only beat what's in front of you. But I think it's also fair to say we will have tougher challenges. But I mean, Ed, building on something that you've said, we've scored as many goals in the last 2 as the previous 6, and that's not purely down to the opposition, is it? What do you think has changed? Is it being a sort of style of play? Is it personnel, or is it simply players coming back refreshed?
Well, I don't know. I can't remember what was on the agenda, but might be ruining the agenda here. But oh well. I really like our new fullback signing.
What's his name?
I still refuse to say his name.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Not Justin, the other one. But like he's been getting into some really good positions, and it sort of shows that last season when we were missing Ricardo, who was getting into those key positions, threat we were missing out on, and he's just come in and he's been, you know, both in terms of getting crosses into, as well as getting into the box himself, scoring, creating, just really good start to his Leicester career. I think that's added a lot.
I think I've seen an interesting statistic yesterday, albeit it's unrelated to Castagna, but it was about Justin, that Justin had 4 touches in the opposition's box, whereas Vardy only had 2. But again, I don't think this actually is on the agenda, but Vardy did feel he was sort of vacant. Obviously, it didn't fall to our detriment, but he wasn't involved as much. Was that something to be concerned about, or is it, can we afford him just to sort of be there? Obviously, he had some key moments, but I think having only 2 touches in the opposition's box as a striker in a game we scored 4, I mean, it's got to be seen as a positive, surely.
I mean, I'm not sure exactly. I think Maddison came on with a half an hour to play and ended up having 6 more touches than Vardy had in 90 minutes. But we know that Vardy, he's not going to be integral, is it? I think Rodgers answered a similar question after the game last week against West Brom and said that he's not going to be the guy that is integral with your whole build-up. But when he does get involved, it's important. I mean, you saw the impact he had for Barnes' goal was crucial, wasn't he? So I think he's one of those players that comes alive at certain moments. Is how I would look at it anyway. But I thought it was interesting the fact that he was much more involved after Maddison came on. I think that the link up, I don't know if this is something that you guys noticed, but I think that the link up that he has with him is much more fluid than he has with any of the other players.
He'd have a green arrow on Football Manager, wouldn't he?
Yeah, well, I mean, we would. Ed's still playing 2008, but he's
come on.
I think the chemistry is certainly there at least. But in terms of the rest of the midfield that was playing behind him, a player that I think we all expected to probably leave in the summer, and by all accounts, he came extremely close to doing so. I think his contract actually had ran out at one point. Was Napoli's Mendy. Last 2 games, he has looked like a new player in my view. I mean, Chris, do you think that he's sort of carved himself a bit of a niche at Leicester now?
Carved himself a little bit of a niche. I'd like to think that wasn't on your script, because that's a beautiful saying.
I don't have a script. Unbelievable.
And puts it to the side. But no.
What's your favourite US law?
Only the originals will understand that. The end of last week's podcast, you'll be laughing, sure. But no, good question, Jamie. Back to the point. Is it a niche? I mean, he was signed as Kante's replacement ultimately, and he's sort of doing a similar job. Not as noticeably or not as remarkably, but albeit I think the fact that he did have so many negative or bad performances last year or since he signed, people almost dismiss him and almost, I won't say don't want him to play well, but they'll struggle to sort of praise him when he deserves it. Because ultimately in that position, a lot of the work you do is going to be scrappy. You're not going to be getting any headlines for doing that sort of stuff. But I think he's doing it very solidly, and I think ultimately he provides that pivot or that balance in the midfield that we need. If we just played with a load of attacking players, we'd be left exposed. So he is ultimately, he's doing that Kante sort of role, but like I said, just not as noticeably. But I think he's doing it perfectly fine, and he deserves to be playing in that position, probably ahead of someone like Chowdhury, purely because. Wait, in my opinion, he's just a bit better than Chowdhury, so you're going to play the better of the two, really. But as a criticism, he is still rash. Both players share that trait, that like yellow card. I mean, that's just a bit. It's bad. It's not a good tackle, is it? And both of them have that trait to their game.
Yeah, I think criticism that was levelled at him in his previous games was that he was too sideways. He was too much of a shuttler. But I thought that he did get us moving forward when it was appropriate. But the man that he's obviously given the platform for has been Youri Tielemans. And I think, I'm not sure who you guys would say was man of the match in the last game, but I think Tielemans put himself in the frame for that, Ed. But do you think that, I mean, there's been comments that he looks fitter, he looks like he's dropped weight, but he really has been running the show for Leicester in the last 2 games, hasn't he?
Oh, me?
Yeah, I mean, you are Ed.
All right, sorry. I didn't usually call me Edbert, so I was just a bit confused about that. Yeah, he has been better. He's had it's a bit of an interesting time at Leicester, full stop, really, because obviously he was crazy good when he first came, and then last season he was by no means bad, but perhaps didn't live up to those expectations. But now Maddison's been out for a while, and he's had to step up because Pratt and Mendy aren't the same sort of creative-minded players as Tielemans and Maddison. Then he's had to step up, and he's done it really well. And whilst I still think we do really miss Maddison, because I just think we're more of a threat when he comes on, he's just sort of turned a corner since sort of start midway through last season, and I think we are definitely getting to see more of what we saw whilst he was on loan.
So, I mean, because you had some comments during the game last night about Mendy and Pratt and those two working together, saying that you thought that they didn't offer enough creativity. But do you think that is worthwhile having them in to make Tielemans the main man, as it were?
Well, if we have the best team, I think 99% of Leicester fans would agree that it probably picks itself as a midfield 3. But yeah, if Maddison's not available, I don't think it's they're bad options, especially if you drop Mendy and have Ndidi when the centre back's fit as well. Without Maddison and getting in either Mendy or Pratt in, then yes, it's a very solid midfield, but we need that creativity as well. And Tielemans is doing really well on his own, but you don't have to be a mathematician to know that two is better than one. So to have those two creative options, I'm a much bigger fan of that. And Maddison seems to be getting back to fitness, so it shouldn't be too long till we see them both out playing together, and hopefully they can bring the best out of each other.
But Chris, do you think it's important that we have that sort of flexibility now, though? Because I think when you say the combo Pratt and Mendy, I think the perception of that is a much stronger pairing than if you just said that at the back end of last year. So do you think that makes us feel like we have a stronger squad now?
Yeah, mate, I can see where you're coming from. Personally, like I don't think I've ever got on Mendy's back. I just think, I don't think he hasn't played well, but ultimately, like I say, in his position, you're not ever going to get the headlines. But yeah, he definitely has come on in terms of quality. But no, someone I'd want to speak about Pratt a bit more. To be fair, I think he is massively underrated. I do see him as a sort of more of a deep line playmaker, just someone who can be the first of maybe three passes that lead to a goal. So he's not going to be directly in the assist, but someone. I think it's quite a bold claim, but obviously Liverpool have just signed Thiago, so I could see him being our sort of Thiago, someone who keeps the ball ticking but making those sort of incisive passes. So that's probably the biggest compliment I can give him. But I do rate him. But I think a big factor is the fact that we've got three, Belgium internationals playing together. I think just from a chemistry point of view, or just like they're not going to be forming like a clique or anything like in a negative way, but just have them around each other. I think it's going to bring the best out of each other's game. I think there'll be a bit of it like sort of intra-squad rivalry, maybe a bit of banter flying around between them. It's always nice to sort of. I think it's certainly made it a lot easier for Castagna probably to come in and know two people, isn't it? Like, mainly for a new signing. But no, I think, like you say, yeah, ultimately having that depth in crucial parts of the pitch is important, yeah. Yeah,
and you're right. We saw Tielemans and Castagna combined for that goal, didn't we? I mean, that pass through from Euro Tielemans was absolutely sensational. De Bruyne does that, and that's all over Sky Sports News for a week. But you're right, having that chemistry can only be a good thing, and I suppose that was part of the reason why they looked to bring in Under from Roma. No idea if that's the correct pronunciation. I probably isn't. I'm very sorry, but his friendship with Soyuncu has been well documented, so that can only be a good thing. But obviously we'll look forward to him hopefully playing on Wednesday. But one of the questions that Chris, I know you raised as well before this podcast was where that signing leaves one Damari Gray. So where do you think his future lies?
With respect to Jamie, I think it was Ed who raised it, but I'll chip in before Ed.
That was respectful though.
Yeah.
Fair play.
Thank you for being respectful of your orders.
If you're going to be a host, do it well. Otherwise, I was getting reins from you. It's fine. No, I think, in brief, I don't think we can afford to let Gray go. I think I've stood by this all along. Until, well, actually, I say that now, we have got a replacement. But yeah, I guess those wider, like having an actual winger, but the fact he's been left out of the squad does that is the writing on the wall for him. I just don't know if there's any interest in him. It's one thing not wanting a player in your squad, but then is anyone willing to buy him or for a fee that we want to let him go for? That's the real question.
Yeah, I think Rodgers made the comments, didn't he? Which he didn't come out and say it, but he essentially implied that Gray had perhaps been offered a new deal because he's only got a year left on his contract and he hadn't signed it. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. I thought he was one of our brightest players in the restart, which isn't saying a lot, but you'd hope that he's still got the opportunity. But so obviously I can't let this move on to Man City just yet without mentioning that the best player in England obviously is Harvey Barnes. Now, I think one of the comments was that he needed to add a bit more consistency to his finishing after the West Brom game. He's got his goal, and I thought he looked very, very dangerous this week, didn't he, Ed?
Well, yeah, I thought you were going to mention him when you were on about Vardy. I thought you were going to say, who cares about Jamie Vardy and how many touches he's getting when you've got Harvey Barnes next to him?
Some more pointers for you there, Jamie, as a host.
I'm learning today. Thank you, guys. This is really important.
Yeah, it's just if you're going to bring things up, bring them up like when it's a good time to mention them.
Thank you. This is important notes.
Sorry, I lost train of thought because I was Googling how to pronounce the U with two dots on for...
I think on his... Did you not watch his little introduction video, which looked like he was being held captive by...
Yeah. Yeah,
I think he wants to
I've
be
not
referred
seen
to as Django.
I saw the picture that made him. They were trying to like be funny about the Undertaker.
Oh yeah, I
I
totally
thought that was
missed.
good.
I've seen that, and I just didn't have a clue because obviously the club does all that like album cover stuff on like match days. I just thought it was an album cover, to be honest. Totally went above my head. Over.
I mean, if you weren't a wrestling fan, you might have thought that someone had died. It was a bit like it was a bit of a risky gag, wasn't it? But look, come on, let's back to the question. Obviously, if you're going to be like a panelist, answer the question. Note number one. What did you think of Harvey Barnes' performance?
I thought Harvey Barnes was. He's been gradually improving. Like obviously, since he's got in the side, he's becoming a real threat now. And you know, for me, and I'm sure for many other fans, like he is the first choice winger now, surely. And I think that, yeah, that's probably because our other wingers, like Perez, he's been fine, but he's not been amazing. Gray and Albrighton are a bit meh, sure. But to say that this youth product's just came in the last few seasons and now is the best winger for a side who's gunning for European places, I think that's great for him and the club. And Christian Mosen has also suggested maybe he's going to get an England call up soon.
You're literally doing Jamie's job. I can tell that Jamie was about to say that.
I just thought it'd be easier to save him messing it up.
Jamie, you can just get off now if you want, to be honest.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, guys. It was great.
No, I think. Well, thanks for that introduction, Ed. Anyway, yeah, I do think that I'll be honest. Like, if you're playing in the Premier League and you're playing well week in week out, you're going to be noticed by the manager of England, which is of course Gareth Southgate. But unfortunately, I think for him is that England. I think we're sort of booming in terms of like the amount of talent coming through for Gareth to pick from, especially in those wide areas. You obviously got players like Sancho, Sterling, Rashford, depending on where Grealish is going to be played, so already there's like 4 or 5 names, and there's only so many you can even fit into a squad. That's not even mentioning the strikers. So, yeah, I think he definitely deserves the call up. Whether he gets one is another question. All he can do is keep his head down and keep playing. But I'm really refreshed with how direct he is. I think you don't see that anymore. Like you see too many players sort of cutting in and maybe just giving the ball back into the centre of the park. But he's just head down, which might be a criticism to be fair when it comes to his shooting. But otherwise, getting to that byline and just wreaking havoc. So I'm a fan, and obviously it's on record that myself, I was not a fan of his last year because I did feel like he was a bit. He wasn't really beating his men, but he's got good at taking men on and delivering now. So good.
Good. Very round and nice. It's like it. I mean, he was definitely one of our most dangerous players, and I think if he can repeat that against the more sort of prolific opposition, then I think he will put himself in the frame. But whether he gets a look in Southgate, as you say, remains to be seen. Right. Look, let's look ahead to the next game. So obviously, a bit more of a challenge this one as we face Man City. Now, Ed, this is an interesting one, though, isn't it? Because I think it has made us look at our expectations and where we put ourselves in the footballing pyramid. I mean, because you've suggested that this is almost something of a free hit because we're not necessarily expected to win. Have you?
Okay. Are you going to ask a question or just a statement?
Listen to the inflection in my voice, Edward.
Inflection.
Educate yourself. Come on. But no, but the question still stands. Do you think there's less pressure?
Yeah, I think, look, we did amazing last season, at least until lockdown. We won't talk about what happened after then. But let's be realistic. That was like, yes, we're wanting to progress, but that was more of a one-off season where we were excellent. I think a lot of the other teams weren't. And this year I expect it to be much more competitive, both from the bigger teams and other teams around us, like Everton, Wolves, etc. So I don't think it's realistic to think that we should be going to Man City and getting a result. Like if we get a point, I think that's an amazing result. Especially like we've said, we've got players out or who aren't fit or whatever. Of course, they're playing tonight. We don't know what's going on with them. Today, Gundogan's been announced he's got COVID. Half their team could have by the time we play them, and we get to play the reserves. Maybe I am being a little bit hopeful there, but yeah, I
think we should just clarify that Ed is not wishing for players to get coronavirus. More saying that. Wow. So in terms of the actual game, looking at from Leicester's point of view, obviously we mentioned the selection headache that Rodgers has in midfield, but Johnny Evans is back after serving the last of his 3-game suspension again with the League Cup game in midweek. He's not had a pre-season really. He's not played any warm-up games. What do you do? He's obviously one of your best defenders, Chris. Do you put him in the team or do you stick with Ndidi?
He's starting at 100%. Well, I say that and then look at the team sheet, he won't be in it. But I just can't fathom a reason why you wouldn't start him, because Brendan Rodgers obviously isn't going to come out and say this is a free hit. But ultimately, I think that all the players sort of know that it is. And I think that in that sense, Johnny Evans should be, put straight in. Also, can Johnny Evans not play in the League Cup? So this would therefore mean it's not necessarily like his first sort of 90 minutes or whatever.
I think that game is the last of his ban because he misses 3 games.
Doesn't he? Yeah, of course. My bad. For some reason, I thought we already paid 3. Obviously not. But no, yeah. Either way, no. I think Johnny Evans should start, bring Ndidi out, and just sort of go at it as we would, unless he's not match fit. But I'm saying if he is match fit, he should be starting definitely. But I think the bonus of sort of previewing this game at the time, not knowing what the Man City result's going to be tonight, is that it doesn't matter if Man City lose against Wolves, because if anything, that's going to make it even more difficult. I think that they've got so much quality in that team that they will have the occasional sort of freak result. But no, I think it's going to be a tough game either way, but I would start Evans 100%.
So, Ed, assuming that Johnny Evans comes in, what do you do in the midfield? What 3 do you go for?
Ndidi, Pratt, Tielemans.
So no Mendy, no Maddison.
No, I think if it was a game, tough one actually, because if it was a game against a lesser team, probably at home, I'd be willing to put Maddison in from the start, just because he's came on as sub, he's got to be nearing fitness now. But given as well how well the midfield 3 has done in the last couple of games, I'd be tempted to keep as much as that midfield 3 as possible. I think dropping Mendy is inevitable if we have a back 4 and Evans is available. And then Pratt and Tielemans probably need to stay together, so you do keep some of that. So, but then, yeah, a Maddison off the bench would be a good option if we wanted to be more creative later on in the game and to chance our arm a little bit.
I mean, Chris, do you think there's a chance that Rodgers could revert to his sort of favoured 3 at the back with both Evans and Ndidi in there?
I just feel like whatever I say, the opposite is going to happen, but I just don't see that happening. I know what you obviously getting at in terms of it's his favoured system potentially, but no, I don't think that's going to be the case. What I'm most excited to see is just, will Castagna be as potent against a better opposition? Because if he's up there creating chances and getting to that byline, then we've got a real player on our hands. But ultimately, the same can be said for Barnes on the other side, or any player. Like I think we alluded to Perez in the previous dialogue, and he's been vacant. Like, I know you're an advocate of him getting back, but again, a player in that position shouldn't be recognised for his defensive duties. if anything, a player in his position should be maybe afforded the luxury of not necessarily having to get back all the time. But yeah, I agree. He's a good team player, but he's just not doing anywhere near enough to create chances, which for me is wasteful.
Well, yeah, I think that he's going to be important, isn't he? I think he's shown that his work rate is valuable, but yeah, you want a player that's going to be making a few. But it's interesting to see what sort of winger he'll favour playing against what is going to be an excellent Man City side. But it's probably a good time to be playing them, if there is such a thing, with them not having as many games. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that we're up against it. But that does give us a chance to put our necks on the line, as it were, with the predictions. Now, Chris, I know that you're eager to talk about your spreadsheet. Before off air, he was saying, "Look, let me talk about my Excel skills." So here's your chance, Chris. What's the standings at the minute?
Oh, it's everyone's. It's a very even playing field because none of us have got anything spot on. All of us have guessed the result right, but none of us have got the correct first goal scorer. Not even the correct first goal scorer for. Actually, no, we have got the correct goal scorer for Leicester, but not the overall correct goal scorer in the game. And none of us got the correct scoreline. So yeah, it's just all very, very level. But it's a very nice spreadsheet. I know that doesn't make good radio or good podcast, but trust me, if you could see what I'm
good
seeing.
life.
What? All right. I am still single, for those wondering.
I'm just not going to follow that up with any comment whatsoever. Right, but I mean, I suppose in that case, we'll let Ed go first with his prediction for this week's game against Man City, because we are aware that there is a League Cup game in the week, but as this is a fairly rapid version of the podcast, we decided to roundly ignore it. So just remembered that. Ed, your prediction for the Man City game, please.
Just to let you know, you can have a first goal scorer from the opposition side. It will happen sometimes.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm going to do now. Just to ruin the fun, because I know you want to wait in here. I'm going to go for Manchester City. It's Manchester City, isn't it?
Sure is.
I'll go 3-1 to them. And I will say the first goal scorer will be Jesus
on the score sheet.
Or Jesus.
3-1, of course, was the scoreline we went and beat them in our title-winning season.
Yeah, but we don't have Rob Huth anymore, so...
Or Shinji Okazaki.
For those reasons.
Naturally.
The goal-scoring maestro that was Rob Huth.
Free-kick expert.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, that was just embarrassing. I mean, what was worse was if you were stoked, because I think we were 3-0 up at the time and we let Rob Huth have a free kick. Right, so my prediction, I will give you a 2-1 loss, and I actually think Vardy will score first.
And around Christmas time, didn't it? Last time it was up there, I seem to remember.
Yeah, went up and then we got bullied a little bit after that, didn't we? Chris, what about you?
I was mulling over the fact, but I'll go 2-2.
Chris is more optimistic.
But I think the first goal scorer will be... I'm going to think Castagne's going to score again. So I'm just typing it in. If anyone can hear any anonymous...
Could I change my goal scorer just for a bit of fun? And I don't know if this will count. I'm not actually going to... But I think the first goal will be an own goal.
Well, you can have it, because...
From a Leicester player.
That is an extremely rogue prediction, but I suppose it's right.
They're going to get it out to the flank, whip one in, and similar to the goal, whatever Burnley defender scored for us.
Yeah, I know. And just for the record, Austin did send me his prediction. I don't remember who his first goal scorer was, but he did say Leicester were going to win 2-1. Ever the optimist. Do
we want to add a quick prediction in for the Arsenal game in midweek?
I literally couldn't care less.
It'll be fun listening after the matches already happened. I think it's going to be 6-5 Leicester City.
6-5
on penalties.
No, because it wasn't Arsenal Liverpool in the League Cup last year like 6-5.
I don't know. I
think it was.
Wasn't there a mental penalty shootout the other day? And the they went round the whole team and both keepers missed.
Yeah, that's when
Hennessy put it in
absolutely got the kick.
Nearly got it out of the stands.
At Bournemouth, yeah.
I think Arsenal will beat us. I think we should make 11 changes. What do you think, Chris? 'Cause I know this is your favourite thing to talk about.
I don't think. When it comes to the FA Cup in January, I will disagree with you. But 11 changes, I don't think there will be 11 changes because, like I say, that is very rare.
I want to see Diabate. I want to see all of them.
What happened to him? Never know. We'll never know. Get Slimani on the pitch. But no, I think. Well, yeah, I don't know. There'll be a few changes, sure, but I think people like Maddison need minutes. Obviously, that would be a change from the last game, but I think it'll be a mix of, under 23s, a couple of them, but mainly, fringe players for Leicester.
Thomas.
Yeah, I think we'll win actually.
Or have you not contributed?
No, I haven't said anything. I think we'll win as well. We're being optimistic. Why not? So let's just say that Leicester are going to win 3-1. Put it out there. Let's just hope for the best. My predictions are never right anyway, are they?
Do you know where it's being played?
It's at Leicester, isn't it?
Well, the fact none of us are really 100% certain shows how much we care.
I just think with the fact that it's likely going to be Liverpool in the next round, we've got a bit of a thin squad with injuries at the minute, and whether it's going to upset a few people, I'm just not necessarily that hugly bothered by it.
The league's just around the corner.
Raw's on the 2nd of October, I think, isn't it?
So it is at home this midweek. The midweek game is at home, and let's hope that we can get some people some important minutes. Hopefully, Under will play. Maddison will probably make an appearance too. So we there's a chance. So that's probably as good a time as any to leave it. I know I always ask Ed if there's anything else you want to bring up, and I might as well.
We can't afford that. You've got daddy duties.
Oh shit! Yeah. Oh yeah. so I have. So we'll leave it there. So I can go and help. But thank you very much for listening. If you made it this far, as always, please do like, subscribe, and follow wherever you get your podcast. And we'll be back next week with 3 out of the 4 of us to hopefully review another good week for the Foxes. So see you then.